Hi, I'm Tony Russo, and this is In Case You Missed It from Kates-Boylston for the week ending Friday, August 30th, 2025. Happy Labor Day, folks. We've got a ton of great stuff, actually probably more than I'm going to get to. I've decided to try to keep these a little shorter because they started out at 15 minutes and now they're in the half-hour range. So I'm going to try to keep the stories short or at least keep the number down. But I'm going to do all that after these words from our friends and sponsors at Starmark.
Funeral service is more than a profession. It's a calling. Starmark understands the care, dignity, and efficiency you need to provide for the families you serve. That's why we specialize in sensible product solutions designed to meet your needs. If you're looking for sustainable, economical, and efficient container and casket solutions, Starmark is here to support you. Because presentation means everything, you deserve a partner you can trust. Starmark, the cremation solutions leader. Visit starmarkcp.com today and discover the difference.
Approximately 70 piles of human cremated remains were discovered scattered along the dirt road outside of Searchlight, Nevada, which has prompted a federal investigation because it is on Bureau of Land Management land. The story that I used was from Hoodline, mostly because it used this phrase, and I wanted to repeat it: Southern Nevada's ongoing cremation industry crisis. Now, I'm no apologist for body mishandling, but crisis seems like a little more than is appropriate to describe it, or we have a nationwide crisis, which I'm not ready to say we're there yet. I think that we've had a bunch of bad luck and bad actors, and I think we're going to have a bunch more as we continue this story today. But I wanted to talk about what is more likely the issue here, because I think this issue doesn't so much fall into the body mishandling bucket as it does into the lazy scattering bucket. And I think, and some of the reporting on this says that, the BLM is looking into commercial distribution on public lands and companies, making sure that there are no companies that are doing that. They mentioned that it's illegal for companies to offer this service, but it wouldn't shock me that if the perpetrators are caught, they belong to experiential, we'll scatter you in the desert kind of thing. And I don't think this is part of a larger problem, but I do think there's a larger problem. I'm going to be reporting more on this in the coming weeks, and I want to be able to reference this story as I go through, so that's why I put it first, because there's more. Over in Pueblo, Colorado, the Pueblo County coroner was discovered with more than 20 decaying bodies in his mortuary. He, Brian Cotter, who owns the funeral home in partnership with his brother Chris Cotter, said that, they've been storing bodies and they've been giving out fake ashes, is the quote, to unsuspecting families. Now, this is, I think, bad acting following loss of control. What I really wanted to bring this up for were a couple reasons. First of all, we're going to be looking at just the process for how these different bodies run. In this case, as I was reading the story, I remembered speaking with someone in Colorado at the time when funeral directors had to have a license. So they passed a law recently, if you're new here, that funeral directors in Colorado had to have a license. And I do not know if Mr. Cotter was licensed, if either of the Messrs. Cotter was licensed. But one of my favorite pull quotes from that was anybody who was committed enough to have a funeral director's license already had one before the law was passed. And people who didn't just didn't. And one of the questions that was raised when we were having that conversation is how competent the next level of funeral directors were specifically the coroners and other people kind of watching over the death care space in Colorado. So don't be surprised if I have a feature on that before too long. But meanwhile, we'll continue to follow this because the failure of the government to protect families is increasingly an issue. You know, families trust funeral directors, but they also trust that if a funeral director acts in bad faith, or if a funeral director is utterly incompetent, or if it's a mix of bad faith and utter incompetence, someone will stand up for them. And increasingly, that seems to not be the case. And I don't want to say in totally unrelated news, but one of the things that is worth mentioning is this week it was reported that the Texas Funeral Service Commissioner Kristen Tips is one of the people who is looking to run for the newly created 35th district after the Texas redrawing of the voter lines. And this is according to the Texas Tribune. Now, you recall that one of the accusations was that she was working to get laws passed to make it harder to sue funeral homes when they botch a funeral, to make the amounts that they can be sued for a little bit less. And put a pin in that because we're going to talk about that again. I have another story for you. In totally unrelated news, a Dallas grandmother alleges that her stillborn grandson's remains were mishandled by the Golden Gate Funeral Home and a crematory in 2022. This is from a television report that's following up on an incident that I think I've already reported on, and increasingly people are reporting on this because the Golden Gate Funeral Home was the one that was in charge of the fetal remains that turned up in a laundromat in Shreveport, Louisiana. But what I wanted to bring out in this story was, according to this report, I want to read it here for you. Golden Gate Funeral Home's license with over 70 entries filed against it between 2021 and 2022. That is 35 a year. It seems like a lot. It seems like you're spending a lot of time in front of the Texas Funeral Service Commission, and then when bodies turn up uncremated, or this one, the woman says that they were presented with the wrong amount of cremated remains, and I want to read this for you to get it right. The Texas State Forensic Anthropology Center revealed a significant discrepancy in weight between the bags they were looking at. One bag of remains weighed just over 11 grams, which is, they say, consistent with a small infant. And the other weighed over 600 grams, which is more like which is 43 times heavier than expected for a 3-pound fetus. So there's not just a problem, there is an endemic problem. And I think that it should be chilling to everyone in the industry that Texas's main thrust is to try to make it harder to sue. And I think that it could eventually hurt them in the insurance market. West Bend Insurance Company has filed a lawsuit seeking to deny coverage to Heights Crematory in Chicago Heights, which is accused of improperly storing and handling over 100 bodies between 2020 and 2025. The crematory allegedly stored bodies in a trailer in a manner inconsistent with industry standards, I guess, to say the least. The West Bend Insurance Company argues that it's not obligated to cover the crematory because the family's claims are for emotional distress and trauma, not for bodily injury or property damage as defined by the crematory's insurance policy. So first order of business, make sure you know what you're covered for, I guess, before you decide to defraud the public. There are no really good guys in this story. But there is one loser, and that looks like it's going to be these families who not only had their trust violated, but if West Bend is successful, they will also have no financial recompense, except to, maybe sell the crane. This is 100 instances at least, but they may not win the suit. They, in 2021, lost a similar attempt to not back, I guess, their insured when the Illinois Supreme Court said that they would have to defend a tanning salon operator who was selling the biometric data without its customers' permission. And the commenters in that, though, said that it might just be that their catch-all clause was insufficient. So I guess we'll find out how good their catch-all clause is. And again, if your insurance provider sends you an update to your catch-all clause and you're also planning to defraud the public, you should read it very carefully. Link in the show notes. In more insurance news, Choice Mutual has come out with guns blazing against the funeral industry as potential charlatans. And I'm going to read you the headline and some of the stuff I've written about the story. Expert warns Alabamians about funeral industry's costly upsell tactics. And it's presented like it's a news story, and there's no author. But it's information supplied by Anthony Martin, who is the founder of Choice Mutual. Again, link in the show notes. And he goes on to say that funeral directors pressure families into feeling guilty for not buying enough, and that they bombard them with packages that they don't need and hide the GPL from them using 2022 numbers. He says that only 18% of funeral homes have their GPLs online. It goes on and on and on. I'm not terribly concerned about that, but I mean, if Choice Mutual is your carrier in Alabama, that's something you should know about. What I am interested in is increasingly I'm an older guy. You can tell if you're watching. If not, I'm 54. Increasingly, I am seeing normal, quote unquote, normal insurance companies pitching me for end of life cost insurance, final expense insurance. That's what they call it. And it feels a little tacky. I don't know if you remember, they may still have them on. I'm not up that late anymore, but the 3:00 in the morning, I guess also the midday commercials where there are 3 old women widows sitting around talking about how expensive the funeral was. And boy, I hope you have enough money to pay for the funeral. Well, you should, for only $1 a month, you can have all the funeral coverage you need, this kind of thing. I don't know if that's the case here. I don't know why, but I do know it was shocking to just take a direct hit. Like, funeral companies are going to rip you off. Buy our insurance. So there's a link to the story in the show notes. But more important, I think I'll be doing kind of a larger feature of this kind of, it seems like a bigger move to final expense insurance. I saw a New York Life commercial the other day. I don't remember. This is the third instance I've seen in just as long. And again, I don't know if I'm more sensitive to it now because I'm covering funeral service, but if you are more sensitive to it, if you've noticed any of this, or if you have a take on it, I would love to hear it. And you can reach me by going to the show notes and clicking on the email link. Before we go, I do want to tease some of what's coming up in Funeral Service Insider, the newsletter this week. We have the details on that Tukio-Spatesville deal that I teased last week. I was able to get that story done and out, and it will be available to subscribers online on Sunday, or it will be in your inbox on Thursday. And the other story I have is my favorite kind of earned media, and this is the Ask the Funeral Director column. I love these things, and I like to profile people who do them. And this is an interesting take because the entire funeral home, well, the funeral directors anyway, take turns. So it's not like one person has to write every week. It's one person writes every 6 or 7 weeks or something like that. So it's really interesting. And like I said, it's my favorite kind of earned media. So there are links to that in the Sunday email, which you will get if you are a subscriber. And if you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing. You can follow the link in the show notes to the subscription page. And if you're interested in any of these stories, you also can use them as your free one. So everyone gets 3 free articles. I think it's every 90 days for just the cost of entering your email address. So if you want to see, this column, because I turn this into kind of a more detailed column, if you'd like to see that, just check out the Sunday column in at Kates-Boylston.com. But that will do it for this week. In case you missed it, is a Kates-Boylston production. It was written and edited by me, Tony Russo. Oh, and videoed. If you are on YouTube, I am on YouTube too with my big, great red face. If you have any comments, just go to the show notes and you can send me an email from there. If you have not subscribed to this, it would be awesome if you did. And have a fantastic Labor Day weekend. I'll check in with you next time.